Good morning, everyone. This is Anthony, Wall Street Trader. It's 9:59 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday, June 16, 2021. This is not financial advice, and the video is intended for educational purposes only. There's a Twitter link in the description below if you'd like to click on that to subscribe to my intraday updates between this video and tomorrow's video. You'll be able to get all of that. If you want to subscribe to the channel and know when these videos come out, because they all come out at different times throughout the day, click on that subscribe button below, and that little bell will ding you every single time that video comes out. Okay, the graph allocation. So we're at 81.4 cents. Excuse me, I don't know what's going on there. So we're at 81.4 cents, and I have no intention of going anywhere. I think we're at a low. I will go run through this in the market slide as we move forward, but just understand these are my entry points. I've dollar cost averaged into it. Could have went 100% at $1.17. I would have been a lot worse off. So the power of averaging in is important. Now, let's take a look at the markets. Okay, so we've got the graph US dollar pair, which I've talked about a couple of times around, this long line here. It feels like a good, healthy area of support right now. But let's take a look at what's going on underneath this covers here. So if I open up this chart, this pattern that we talked about yesterday, there was a upside down head and shoulders above that strong, healthy line of support. This was the left shoulder here. This was the head. And yesterday at around, June 15th, right around here, we were at 70 cents. Now we had spiked all the way up to almost 80 cents. Then we came all the way back down. So we were good for a 14% pop. Came back down. So we're back to where we started from yesterday. So really no change day over day. It's hard to tell if we're going to complete this in totality. We may have already completed it once we hit almost 80 cents. So let's move into the graph Bitcoin pair, because as we all know, it's one of the two components that drive the graph US dollar. So we're going to look at this one first, and then we'll look at Bitcoin second. So let's look at GRTBTC, which is the strength of the graph relative to Bitcoin. Now we also have a very strong line of support on this graph to Bitcoin pair. And if you look further down and we drill down, this was the broadening wedge that we had identified. We certainly went up to the top of the wedge as we had anticipated when I drew this thing, when it was down here. Now we're up. So we completed this broadening wedge cycle back to here. Now the question is, we made a nice pullback here. So, this would be a great buying point for folks that have not taken a dabble at the graph US dollar pair or the graph, whatever your local currency pair is. I think this would be a great spot. Why? Because this is the universal. This is across all fiat currencies. This is the same exact chart. There is nothing that changes. I don't have to worry about fluctuations between fiat currencies in this particular part of the equation, because this only compares itself with Bitcoin. There is no fiat currency in here. Notice how it's the graph relative to Bitcoin. Bitcoin's a straight edge. Why? Because it's got a fixed supply. And the graph is relative to the benchmark, fixed supply, value, store value, and that's how we compare our cryptos. These other ones here are more relative to the dollar. So it's hard if you're someone who's investing using a different currency to really keep track of these two as much as keeping track of this one. So anyway, let's move back over here to GRTBTC again, which I consider the true indicator or the inner strength of the graph globally. And we're actually at a good point where I think potentially, picking some up right around here if it drops a little further down. And if I didn't have a position in it, I'd probably put 25% into this in terms of an overall allocation percentage to the graph. So if I had $100 and I wanted to invest it in the graph, I wouldn't put it the whole 100 in yet. Probably put 25% right around this point right now. Now, let's look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin under a little pressure, but nothing significant. I mean, if you're under 3% in a day, I would consider that a boring, boring day. And that's exactly what we've got. Right now we're at 39,291. And we're below the range I'd like to be in. It's not to say we won't pull right back into it. But we have to keep our eye on it. But there's a couple of peripheral macro related news out there on Bitcoin. Nothing fancy, nothing schmancy. But let's just take a look at one of them. Chairman of Italy's securities regulator sees issue with unregulated crypto market. So they want to go and try to regulate stuff. Again, this is so small in the grand scheme of things. Why? Because the stock market, every stock market out there is fully regulated at way more than cryptos, and they have trillions of dollars going through it. And the reason that is because it's more of a trustworthy environment to put your capital into than some of the riskier assets. And that's why you'll see huge institutional involvement in those things. And I think we're going to see more of that. As Bitcoin becomes more and more regulated, a lot more institutional investments will go into it, hands down. Okay, let's take a look at Tunisian minister. He's going to decriminalize the buying of Bitcoin, which is fantastic. So we have a country that is looking to decriminalize the acquisition of Bitcoin. This is very similar to what is going on, and I've continued to talk about this. This is the same thing that's going on in India. This is the same thing right here. Like, I think they need to start getting focused in on going after stop going after like what they consider criminal activity, which is buying Bitcoin, and start thinking about how to clean it up. There's no reason why people shouldn't be allowed to buy Bitcoin. And I think people understand it's kind of silly. So anyway, that's kind of like what's going on here. So things are slightly lightening up. And yeah, we need more regulation. And there's a lot of anecdotal stuff out there saying, well, regulation's bad. And I call that bull. I think regulation's good. A cleaner Bitcoin is a better Bitcoin. And a better Bitcoin is a Bitcoin that institutional investors, very large whales, would get into that in a more meaningful way. I think we just scratched the surface in terms of any kind of institutional involvement into Bitcoin, and the prospects in the future of cryptocurrencies, generally speaking, will, these are great tailwinds for the crypto space. So anyway, keep your eye on this. I'll chat through Twitter on any major changes on our infamous graph relative to Bitcoin pair, and have a good day, everyone.